Hello and welcome to Passport to the Past, Stories from the Big House. This presentation is suitable for children in Key Stage 2. The curriculum links are to history and English.
And a big hello and welcome from Gloucester Archives. My name is Gemma and this is Kate. Now, at Gloucester Archives, we keep the records for Gloucestershire and South Gloucestershire. We have about 10 million items, things like diaries, letters, all different types of things that can be kept on paper. And in today's session, we're going to be finding out about big houses, so country houses. And all of the items that we're going to be talking about were inspired by our own collections.
So, what are we going to be doing today? As Gemma said, we're going to be finding out what it was like to live in a big house. And by a big house, we mean a huge house, a mansion house, a country pile, of which there are lots of examples in Gloucestershire and South Gloucestershire. We're going to be meeting some of the people who worked and lived in the big house. Some of those will be family members, wealthy people who owned the house. Others will be servants who help to look after the family, take care of the house and the grounds that surrounded it. And we're also going to be creating our own stories at the end of the session, imagining what it would be like to be one of those people living in the house, either as a wealthy person in the family or as one of the servants who supported them.
So, first of all, what is a big house? Well, as Kate said, a big house is a mansion or a large house, often in the countryside. Many had over 100 rooms, which is amazing when you think about it. And the houses often also had a lot of land around them, and that included gardens, parks, and farmland. And they were also owned by wealthy aristocrats, and aristocrats were people who tended to rule the country in the past.
So generations of the same family often owned the house and passed it down from generation to generation. So you had the same family living in the house for hundreds of years in some occasions. And often you would have grandparents, parents, children, and extended family members all living under the same roof. But because of the size of the houses, it wasn't a problem. There was enough room for everybody.
And during the 1800s, many big houses brought in modern gadgets. This included flushing loos, gas lighting, and later this was upgraded to electric lighting, boilers, and running water.
So, as you can imagine, the owners of these large houses had a lot of money and they often held lavish parties. A good example is Sir Christopher Codrington's 21st birthday party, which was held in March 1826. This party lasted for 5 days and cost over £13,000. That's some party, Gemma.
That is quite a party. The wealthy owners also rarely spent much time with their own children. Young members of the family tended to be brought up by paid nannies or governesses, and we're going to be meeting one of these nannies, Alice O'Malley, shortly.
So the household was run by servants. They would often live in the house, but obviously they didn't live in the grand rooms. Their bedrooms would have been up in the attics, and they would have been very hot in the summer and probably freezing cold in the winter. Servants weren't paid very much at all. Their wages were low and they worked long hours, very often from 6 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. They weren't allowed very much time off, and very rarely were they allowed holidays. Some servants started to work in the big house when they were still children. It wasn't unusual for servants to be 8 or 10 years old. The youngest workers often did the worst jobs, and one of the worst jobs of all was emptying the chamber pots, which people kept under their beds to do things which later they would be doing when flushing toilets were invented.
And now we can see a really beautiful picture that we have here at Gloucester Archives. This is a picture of some of the staff who worked at Doddington Park in around 1890. And you can see that most of these people in the photograph are the outdoor staff, so the people working on the grounds and in the parks. And this might be a good moment just to stop the video for a few seconds and have a look at who these people were and the type of jobs they did.
So we've already said that some servants started working when they were young children. And in this photograph, we can see two young lads right at the front there. How old do you think they are? To me, they look as if they might be perhaps 10 or 11 years old. The boy on the left is called White, and he's a stable boy. That means he works with the horses. The other boy is called Jenkins, and he's a gardener. Now, in the main photograph, the man on the far left is a blacksmith. He's also called Jenkins, so that makes us think that perhaps there's a father and son relationship here.
And here we have some examples of the housekeeper's weekly accounts. Now, the housekeeper was the person who tended to run these big houses. And we have lots of this kind of thing here at Gloucester Archives. And what was really important as a housekeeper was that you were aware of what money was coming in and also going out of a house. So we have lists here of the money being paid for food, for drink, and also for wages.
Here's another thing that we have good examples of here in our collections. And these are menus for a banquet at Batsford Park, which is a stately home at a big house in Gloucestershire. And this banquet lasted 2 days, a 2-day feast. A lot of money, an awful lot of money and time and effort would have gone into preparing these lavish dishes.
And here you can actually see some of the recipes that we have here at Gloucester Archives, and these are particularly precious to us. And they're precious to us because it's really interesting for us to know what sort of things people were eating in the past. And if you look down at the pictures, you can see some examples of that. You have things like lemon pickle, green pea soup, and you even have a sauce for boiled carp, which was a type of fish. Have you ever eaten carp, Kate?
I have. I ate carp once because Polish people still eat a lot of carp. It's not popular with British people, but Eastern European people eat it a lot. And my husband comes from Eastern Europe. So I have tried it. I didn't really like it, Gemma.
Right. Not sure I would either, but...
So we're going to find out, we're going to hear some stories from people in the big house. The first person we're going to hear from is called Mrs. Maisie Bullis, and she was the cook in the big house in about 1850. Edward James was the hall boy in 1850, around about the same sort of period, and we're going to hear his story next. Then we're going to move on a few years, and we're going to hear from Alice O'Malley, who was the nanny at the big house a little bit later in the 1880s and 1890s. And then finally, we're going to hear from Lady Jemima. She was one of the wealthy family who owned the house, and she was a suffragette in the 1913. We're going to hear a little bit about the suffragettes and what they did.
So here we have the story of Mrs. Bullis, a cook from the 1850s.
Hello children, my name is Mrs. Bullis and I want you to guess what I do. These are the tools of my trade. So what do you think, children, I do for a living? Yes, you're absolutely right. I'm the cook at the big house and these are all the things I use in the kitchen. You can call me Maisie, but my name is Mrs. Bullis and everybody at the big house calls me Mrs. Bullis. I'm visiting you from 1850. That's, oh my Lord, that's over 150 years ago, 170 years ago. And I was born in the year of our Lord in 1800. And I've written down a few notes because I wanted to tell you everything about what I do. So I'm just going to pick them up. So I came from the West Country to this big house. And when I was a child, there was father and mother and 11 of us children. We were all born at home. Father was a blacksmith. Now, do you know what a blacksmith is? We lived next door to the smithy where the blacksmith worked. Mother was a washerwoman and she took in sewing. She made clothes for all of us children and we lived in a 2-bedroom cottage. All things considered, children, I've done very, very well for myself, rising to the position of cook in the big house. Now, you'll have to excuse me because I'm an old lady for 50 and I'm just going to have a sip of water. Now, I want to tell you about something in particular. Christmas was my favourite time of the year when I was a kiddie. Was Christmas your favourite time of the year? I think it probably is your favourite time of the year. Well, we always had snow in my day. And remember, this is the early 1800s. I'm going way back now, 200 years. We always had a goose that Mother would roast. And all of us children had a Christmas stocking and we'd have an orange, a new penny, a handmade toy and one other little item. We always had chestnuts, which Father would roast in the ash pan under the fire. And I'm very proud of the fact I went to school till I was 10 years old. And I'm able to read and write. And a lot of people of my age, children, they cannot read and write. but I'm very proud. As you can see, I'm reading now all the notes that I wrote down to tell you about my life. We'd always help with the harvest as children every summer, and we didn't have the things you have today, so there were no mobile phones and no computers and no TV. We kept a few chickens for the eggs. We bought the cream and the milk and the butter from the farm. And Father sometimes bought a brace of pigeon or a rabbit from the local poacher whose name was Sam. Do you know what a poacher is? You must ask your parents and they'll tell you. We had a well in the back garden where we drew all our water in buckets that we would lower down into the well. And we had a bath once a month in an old tin bath called a galvanised bath in front of the fire. Those were the days. Those were the days we thought we were rich. Mind you, children, most of us kiddies had nits or head lice. Terrible, terrible things. Mother would comb them out with a steel comb. We went to church every Sunday and I attended Sunday school from age 6 to age 8. Very, very happy days. Now, I started work in domestic service at the age of 11. I would wake up, I would have to start work 5 o'clock in the morning till 7 o'clock in the evening every single day as a scullery maid. So I had to wash up, I had to clean the kitchen, I had to clean the pantry, I had to lay the coals, I had to wash the bottles. Good Lord, it makes me dizzy. It makes me dizzy to think about it. Anyway, I had to help the cook. And then as the years went by, I worked my way up. I minded my P's and my Q's, and I ended up as the cook in the big house. And I'm very, very proud of the work I do as a cook. Now, shall I tell you a little bit? Shall I tell you some secrets about the Lord and Lady of the big house? One of his lordship's favourites that I have to cook for him for breakfast, mind you, is kedgeree. Kedgeree. Now, kedgeree is yellow haddock, so that's smoked haddock, with a few sultanas thrown in, softly cooked in milk with some curry paste and some rice. Now, he eats this for breakfast, and the reason he eats it for breakfast is he used to be a colonel in the Indian Army, and that's what they eat in India, kedgeree. They eat it for breakfast, they eat it for dinner, they eat it for supper. And that's what he likes. Now, I think it's a real queer kettle of fish. I wouldn't want to eat that. Anyway, another favourite is something called devilled kidneys. You will never have heard of devilled kidneys. I bet my life and soul on it. But you probably don't know what devilled kidneys are all about. Now, devilled kidneys, it's where you cook the kidneys till they're very, very soft. You mix them, you cook them with onions, you mix them with rice, you serve them on toast or just with some rice on the side. It's nothing to do with devils, children. Devilled kidneys is nothing to do with devils. Other favourites of his lordship's include bloaters, which is a type of really big fish, a bit like me. Venison, a rack of lamb, pheasant with red cabbage, and we poach a whole salmon when we've got one. Oh, and I cook for the house my own recipe, gammon, which is a big ham that I cook every Christmas. Me, I like a nice plate of bread and cheese with a crispy apple and some of my homemade piccalilli and a glass of cider, because I'm a West Country woman. I make all my own pastry, I make all my own bread and cakes, I make scones for afternoon tea, and I can gut a fish or a rabbit or a pheasant quicker than you can say Jack Robinson. So there. And I pride myself on my cooking skills. And I want to share something with you today, children. Now, this is a piece of advice from Maisie Bullis. Never, ever, ever trust a skinny cook. Bye, children. Bye, bye-bye.
And the next one, the story of Edward James, who was the hall boy in the 1850s.
Hello there. My name's Edward, and I'm the hall boy here at the big house. Now, you might think it a bit funny because well, between you and me, I'm an old man, aren't I? But I've worked at the house now for, it must be 45 years I've worked there. I quite like it. It's quite good fun, but you have to be careful. You have to be careful of Mr. Jackson. He's the butler. And I tell you what, that cook, Mrs. Bullis, oh, blimey, she can be a tartar, I can tell you. And I wouldn't like to be one of her kitchen maids. But anyway, let me tell you a little bit about myself. Well, so my name's Edward, and I was born here in the village on the estate up the road there. Now, my dad was born in the village. My mum was born in the village down the road, and they've never left it. But I have. I've been to Bristol. It's a long way away. Went by stagecoach and it took us all day. 8 hours. And it was bumpy, very, very bumpy. Anyway, what do I do here? I suppose you want to know what I do as a hall boy. Well, I should actually do a bit of everything. So mostly, my most important job is cleaning the shoes. I've got to clean the shoes for the butler and all the footmen. Okay, all the male servants out. So I clean their shoes every night. So I've done it for a long time now, but I do other things as well. So I will sharpen the tools for the gardener. So there's a nice axe, and I have a billock here. So he likes me cleaning, he likes me sharpening them. I have a good time with the gardener. We often go and chat together. But what else do I do in the house? Well, it's everything. I have to make sure that all the wood buckets are full, all the coal buckets are full, and I have to give them to the chambermaids. They go upstairs, and I give them to the parlour maids. So I do a lot of different things. I also run errands for people. So only the other day, the master came up to me and said, "Edward, I want you to nip down to the village to the blacksmith. Can you go and give me word for getting a new shoe for me horse?" So I had to go and do all that. So I do lots of things like that all over the place. Now, what's it like here? Well, it's nice. We have good food, quite good work. It's not dangerous like on the farm. And it's funny, I thought I'd be a farmer. Thought I was going to be a farmer, working here on the farm, on the estate, like my dad before me. But one day, he comes up to me, says, "Edward, I've got me a job at the big house. You're going to be a hall boy. You're going to get £8 a year, and you're going to get 2 days off a year." Wow, blimey, £8? I was flabbergasted. I've never heard of so much money before. I think it's about £650 a year in your money. Gosh, it was brilliant. But say, that was a long time ago, and now I get paid £18 a year. That's over £1,000 in your money. So it's wonderful. I get all my food and board paid in and everything. It's great. I used to sleep in the hall on a fold-down bed, but I'm lucky now because we've got a younger hall boy, because I'm getting a bit old and a bit big, and I can't do that much anymore, really. The master likes me, so he keeps me on. So with the new hall boy, he sleeps there in the hall now, and I've got a room all to myself. I can tell you it's really, really good. I really like it. Now, the butler told me you were coming today, and he said, "Edward, why don't you make a list of what you did normally, what you do yesterday?" I said, "That's a very good idea." So I got him to write it down. I can do a bit of writing and numbers, but it's not my best. So I got it all written down here, what I did yesterday. So, and I've got to get some glasses to read this, because they're not very good ones. They're old ones, but they're better than nothing. So, okay, what did I do? Well, 6 a.m. I got up and I got washed and dressed. I made my bed and I woke up the new hall boy to start his work. 6:30, I started cleaning all of the boots. Okay, so the upper servants and the butler and some of the family members as well. The butler, the cook and the housekeeper, they all get up around 7:30, so their boots need to be cleaned and ready for them to wear. Okay, the other family members, them upstairs, they don't get up till, well, gone 8 o'clock usually, something like that. So 7:30, I went round and I emptied the chamber pots. You know what a chamber pot is, isn't you? It's where you have a wee in the night in a little bucket thing. Okay, I emptied all them for everybody. And I have to wash them out as well. It's not a very nice job, but I'm going to make the new hall boy do it soon. It's going to be much easier for him. Anyway, 7:45, I helped lay the table for breakfast in the servants' hall. We don't eat upstairs, of course. We eat downstairs. There most of us live. And at 8:15, it was breakfast, and it's really nice breakfast, but bread and cheese, and we had a lovely bit of bacon today, which was wonderful. Anyway, 9:15, we have to go to prayers in the big hall. The master takes us all for a prayer service, so everybody has to go. It doesn't last long, though. We just say a few prayers. Lord's Prayer mainly. That's mostly the one I can remember. So we did that. Anyway, 9:30, that's when I started my daily duties. And as I say, I helped tidy up in the scullery. I went and chopped some wood, okay? And I went and loaded all the coal into the scuttles. we usually have to take hot water upstairs all the time. That can be a really hard job, but the master is thinking of getting piped water in the house, hot and cold. That'll be fantastic, won't it? Won't have to do any work then. Well, mostly. I'll have to keep shoveling coal into the boiler, but you know, that's not so bad. Anyway, 10:30, I help lay the servants' table for tea. We have a cup of tea, and that's at about 11 o'clock we do that. Now, usually the butler has a meeting with the master of the house just before then, and I get loads of jobs afterwards. But as it happened, there was nothing to do yesterday, so it was really good. Had a nice, easy day. 12 o'clock, dinner. My special job is I lay the table and then I go and ring the dinner bell for people, and then they come down and they'll assemble for dinner. I say people, it's all the servants really. Anyway, after lunch, cleared away the dishes. Then I had to go down and start chopping some wood. We had a tree fell down the park the other day, so I went and saw the head gardener just to ask him, can he bring some wood up? Because we're getting a bit thinner wood up here. So we went and got his men down, and that's what we did. Right. After that, it's time to lay the table for tea. That's 3 o'clock. That was lovely. And then 4 o'clock, we had tea in the servants' hall. That was wonderful. We had a nice bit of cake. I know I say about Mrs. Bullis, the cook, she's a bit of a tartar, you know, but she does make a lovely cake. So it's really nice. If you get to see her, ask her about a cake, I would. 5 p.m, I went upstairs and I refilled all the oil lamps in the house. That's a long job and it takes a long time. I have to be very careful I don't spill it. You know, it can be a bit messy. I did spill one the other day and I got to get the maid in to clear it up, but it wasn't too bad. Anyway, 6 o'clock, went to the cook and I helped her start laying the table for dinner. Okay, that's the big dinner upstairs. It's an hard dinner. We eat a bit later. And then it was really good. They didn't have any guests in the big house last night, so the master gave us a lot of time off. So we had lunch, dinner if you call it, we had that early. We had it about 8:15. It was wonderful. We had a great big long table full of food, and we had some roast beef. I know it's not a Sunday, but it was roast beef left over from the Sunday. It was gorgeous. Mrs. Bullish, she did a fine job there. And then after that, we helped clear up, did some washing, okay? And then it was almost time for bed. I had a little bit of relaxation. We actually played a game of dominoes downstairs, which we do that sometimes with the footman. It can be quite fun. Hard work, but it's fun. Anyway, the last job of the day, I had to go up and collect all the boots, all these shoes, bring them back down, and then I could clean them first thing in the morning. By the time I'd done that, it was about 11:30. So then I went to bed. It was wonderful. So that was a typical day that I did. It was really fun. Anyway, let's see what time is now. It's, oh gosh, yeah, it's getting a bit late. So I better go because I've got to get these boots back and I've also got to get this bullock sharpened. So I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.
And now we'll hear from the story of Alice O'Malley, the big house nanny from the 1880s.
Oh, now I have to look at you lot as well, have I? As well as my usual 2 charges. My name is Alice O'Malley. That's Miss Alice to you. I'm the nanny, and it's my job to try and bring the children of the house up to be a proper young gentleman and a young lady. May the good Lord take pity on me. John is 12 now, and Jemima is 11. Their little sister Clemmy died of the whooping cough when she was but 3 years old. God rest her soul. Sir James and Lady Charlotte have never recovered from losing their little angel. All the money in the world could not save that precious child. Well, you may think that John and Jemima are too old to need a nanny, and you'd be right. But I've worked for the family for nigh on 40 years, and I haven't seen my own family or had time to get married and have children of my own. So they let me stay on and say that I will be able to end my days here. I hope I can help the children grow up to be a proper lord and lady. As the children from the big house, they will have a duty when they're grown to take care of the staff and tenants who belong to the household. It's not as if I'm not used to a lot of children. You know, I was the eldest of 12 myself and looked after my little brothers and sisters while my parents were working on the farm. Do you know what this is? Well, of course you do. It's a potato. But there's a link between this potato and how I came to be here in this big English house looking after the children, when by rights I should still be on the family farm in my own beautiful country of Ireland. You might not believe it now, but when I arrived here in 1848, I was literally starved. I had no flesh on my bones at all. I was just like one of them skeletons. I don't think I would have survived if Mrs. Bullis, the cook, hadn't taken pity on me and fed me on scraps from her kitchen. Don't be fooled, by the way. She's a kind soul, really. Like many farms in Cork, in Ireland, where I lived until I was 17 years old, we grew potatoes and nothing else. And that's what we ate. We were too poor to buy meat or even bread, but potatoes fill your belly, and we didn't often go to bed hungry. We had nothing else. Oh, but then came the terrible time when our crops failed and rotted in the ground. We had nothing else to eat or to sell. All the farms and families around us were in the same situation. I found out afterwards that it came to be called the Great Hunger, and it lasted for many years. But I did not stay in Ireland to see this. As the oldest girl in the family, I came to England and was lucky enough to get a job in the laundry at the big house. I sent all the money I earned, £13 a year, home to my family in Cork. My sister Kathleen wrote to me to say that all my family had survived, thank the good Lord, but my brothers and sisters had scattered to the four winds to find work and food. Declan is in Australia now, would you believe? And Hannah is in America. Kathleen ended up working as a maid in a big house in Bristol, only 50 miles from here. It's my dream that one day we may see each other again by God's good grace. Well, the family at the big house noticed I was good with the little ones, so after a while that became my work. I looked after Sir James when he was a boy, and now I take care of his children, John and Jemima. Jemima is a rowdy maid who refuses to act like a little lady and has all sorts of fancy ideas. She gets those from her mother. John is a kind boy, but a delicate one, and I do worry for him. His father insists that he must ride out with the hunt, but he prefers to stay with me while I sit and mend the bedroom linen. If Jemima could go out on the hunt, I'm sure she would be leading the charge. So Giles has decided that John should have a career in politics, which he says is the fitting for the son of a wealthy landowner. But John prefers to stay quietly at home. Yesterday, he showed me his designs for some elegant new furnishings for the drawing room, but I had to swear not to say a word to his father. That kind of work is not fitting for a young master, he'd say. And Sir Giles often threatens John with a spell in the army. That'll toughen you up, he says. His sister has her own ideas about everything in God's green earth, including how a young lady should be dressed. Why can't girls wear breeches? She asks me. The child has no sense of decency at all. A maid dressed like a boy, indeed. Not while I still draw breath, I says to her. Excuse me, I must go. Jemima! Jemima, what in the name of all that is holy are you doing out there, child? You've no business to be talking to the butcher's boy. Go round to the tradesman's door, my lad. Cook will see you there and take this week's order. That young lady will be the death of me. Last but not least, the story of Lady Jemima, who was a suffragette from 1913.
Hello children, I am Lady Jemima and I live in the big house with my father, my mother, my brother John and a housekeeper, maids, cook, nanny and gardeners. The year is 1913. I was born in 1880. My father was a colonel in the army and my mother runs the house. I was well educated in reading, writing, Latin, French, arithmetic, music, art, modern history and the classics. I did not go to university, but I could have. It is only recently that women have been allowed to attend university. All of the girls that I grew up with now live in their own houses with their own husbands and their own children. But I'm not married, even though I'm 33 years old. Very few women marry this old, and people call me a spinster, but I don't mind. I find that I'm far too busy to look after a husband, a house and children. Years ago, Mother and I went to a meeting in the town of Bath, where the speaker said that women were equal to men and that they should be allowed to vote. The women were called suffragettes. Maybe in the future, women will be able to vote for who should run the country, but in 1913, today's date, only men are allowed to do so. Now, children, why do you think voting is so important? Our country is run by leaders called politicians. They meet and decide on new laws and they solve problems. But the politicians are chosen by the people. The people get to vote in something called an election, and that decides who the leaders are. Politicians then decide things like whether we should go to war, how to look after the environment, whether we should have a free national health service for all, what we are taught in schools, and everything else which may affect our lives. Before I was born, only very rich men who owned lots of land were allowed to vote. But recently, it was decided that all men over 21 should be able to vote, but not us women. This means that women have no say whatsoever in how the country is run. This is something I do not agree with at all. And so Mother and I joined the local suffragette group and for many years have been campaigning for a new law allowing women to vote for how the country is run. I help run a suffragette shop in Bath, which gives out leaflets and sells badges and other items to keep the campaign going. My family supports everything that I do, and my father even gives me an allowance, some money each week, so that I can carry on helping the Votes for Women campaign. I know lots of other girls who are suffragettes, but many of their families won't even talk to them. They think that only men should have a say in how the country is run, and that women should only care about girlish things like sewing, looking after children, and running a home. My family even allows other suffragette women to stay at our house when they're giving talks near us. Father picks them up at the train station in his new car, and everyone stares. They think it is very exciting because very few people can afford their own car, and many people still use horse-pulled carriages to travel. The car is very loud and it goes very fast. It does not have a roof, so sometimes we get rained on. Lots of different women are suffragettes. I even met an Indian princess. My friend Annie, another suffragette, often comes to visit. Annie is from a poor family. Sometimes I mend her gloves for her and I'm teaching her to speak French. I like to stay in touch with my friends and write several letters every evening to them. I go to suffragette meetings every week where women speak about how important it is that women can vote. Annie often speaks and she speaks very well. However, I am afraid to speak in case people laugh or I forget what to say, so instead I sell the tickets. Sometimes the crowd cheers for the suffragettes, and at other times they shout at the speakers and say terrible things. Last week we arrived outside a meeting and children threw things at us and Clara hurt her head. We have decided to pay policemen to come to our meetings to protect us in the future. After the meetings, we often go out to dinner or lunch. And only yesterday I went to the assembly rooms where I had fish with potatoes. Afterwards, a man in the street called me a suffragette and I felt proud. The leader of the campaign to get women the vote, Mrs. Pankhurst, often organises marches to London. Sometimes they march to the Houses of Parliament where the politicians meet to decide how the country is run. She's asked me to join them. They've started breaking windows and setting postboxes on fire. They say that the politicians will not listen to them, and so they have to get their attention by causing disruption and breaking things. Mrs. Pankhurst and many others have been arrested lots of times for breaking the law. Father said I was not allowed to break the law, and so I wrote to Mrs. Pankhurst saying that I would not join her for her marches. Two of my friends, Jessie and Vera, even attacked the Prime Minister and were sent to jail. Mother was very angry and said she would no longer go to the meetings if the suffragettes were going to do such things. Mother and Father have even said that Vera and Jessie were no longer allowed to stay at our house. The newspapers are saying we might go to war with Germany and Austria-Hungary. I hope they are wrong. I do not want my brother John to have to go to fight. And what will happen to the suffragettes if war breaks out? Will people forget about the importance of women voting? I hope that in my lifetime I will see women get the vote and that all my hard work will be worthwhile. Perhaps one day I will even find time for a husband. So this might be a good place to stop the video and see if anybody has any questions about what they've learnt today.
And if you want to, this could be a good time for you to invent your own story. Imagine yourself back in time, living in a big house. Most likely you would have been one of the servants in the household, either one of the people who worked outside, looking after the horses or the farm or the gardens, or perhaps the nanny or the cook, or somebody who helped to care for the family inside the house. What's your story?
Thank you and goodbye.